연지 제물도던 흥미장 오늘 몰음 점보가 비었다. 아그로 다른 잠도 실무도. tumbato je janla ki shom tsar teni chongden de ji sedang dan ba shan bi wa kangbo la ka tsar wa kangbo kyo lo tsam ba chma me pe chig bi nan der song shi kangbu kyang sor wa chongden de de che wa tan ba ti chong je jang tsar wa mo cho ti chi la de je na chongden de de kum ngom ber tsang je wa ti chi na naksir chimbu sa shug ji na le tangbo ge long ta la chur ton jam chi na le zamba chima mi pichaba tem chine dalan dirkiji chogo zamba gambo nyumbar jigde gerlong da sem $2 tonji sem $2 tonji rambo chine chimbur zan rwa mabligi gerlong da samba chirta shibir ji noru rambo chim benjer ya in chimwi noru dan chongbar mafshi zamba gambo semchinji wangbo tak mahtak bar ninsewi wangbo nyewra mabjibji Rma me pala rma mauyongji lam chemburun jikburun dopa chang tokbur magzaji jamsu chembola valangar mujis mavligji rib yongji nangda magzigi nimi godo chimwe menkirji mavlogji sanki ga da jokburun dopa namla wi da magzaji zumba kangbo gerlong do 탐치는 특바침보 영 특바를 지발레 샹집지 스토라 샤트때 샹집지 심토라 샤트때 점바강본도 냥토지 특바 마스턴지 냥토지 특바는 양 특바 마연데 셈친지 왕보 름바 시발라 냥토도 특노 코 밀롱던 저 마테 디날로 잠베트마메 베트르비 체 제르터 게롱데 덕톤 숭은지 연에는 망보 지스 잠버른 제르와 테스타위 땅은잔라 뇽버지네 대덕라 양 특버 조보 Shanchip ji shir sanjir ngabja la nim kar shishan givis tsawa dan damde te dok shanchip ji sem ngumbar jirne te dok jewa tamba ti kangwa lam gur shigmsar de dharma vjarwa jirwa tang yang takbar lana me pa yang takbar zogba shanchip le shir mar dobran jirwa te tabi chutanni chumdan de dak ndirnyamda semso nyantu shirur ji sem dam samba maftak bar salagang chu martondo samba maftak bar salagang chu martondo techi lata jena maftak bar chumdan de nyantu ji shirur ji sem dam samba maftak bar salagang chu martondo binga shofa Di lata jena nyantu ji semchen tamchit ji wangbo mchuk mayan balam keba mamchi badang jirtir devjang shakba rabchon bayang takbar zogba sanji vjin dirtagdim nyabar shakbayang mayan babki ba lakso bjondan de di lata dak jewa tamba tim churn zhijan char mchogo teni bjondan de ji tsedan tamba gadayi v chimbola kaftsarwa gadayi v kyod latsamba chimami pachakba nanjar songshi gadayi kyang sorwa bjondan de dak jewa tamba te churn zhijan shivir mchogo te ji lata jina bjondan de dak ngumbar tsar jawa tiasina bjondan de ji gerlong nam la damba mdur kar tsar te mdo ten ji tsigtan la wapi lata daki ndarta te martak pi tondang dengar pi tondang dagme pi tondang jivi ton ftane latsam bachama me pe chagbim chine daglan darkijim chogo zamba gada chembo gedam cheba dang stia dang chebin jigba dang dambi chu martonji zamba gada chembo gang shinda marke ba dang market ba dang stibr manjer ba dang mangag ba dang gagbr manjawa tena martak pi ton to gang phongbo nga bo la tomba ni ter togme kia me per togba na tondan dingar ki tondo gang dag me ba nis me ba ten dag me pi tondo gang rang ngo me ba janji ngo me ba na mambarde gang mambar ba ten jever manjer jang gang rap ta ma jeva ten jebi toni no tamban do sha ne gerlong de do lemba me pi zagba me na sim number trollo jondan de di slat da jewa tamba de chun zhang char mchu wo deni chana dama manga
Today we will continue with our study of the Vimalakirti Sutra. We are now moving forward with Chapter 2. In the content of Chapter 2, as we discussed in our previous session yesterday, Vimalakirti the layman gave Subhuti many profound teachings. However, some of these teachings might be quite difficult for some beginners to accept at first. For example, in what we discussed yesterday, it was mentioned that one could attain liberation while committing the 5 heinous crimes. It also spoke of taking refuge in the 6 heterodox teachers, while simultaneously destroying or denigrate the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. There were even expressions about generating a mind of killing or wishing harm upon all beings. These are some of the challenging concepts we encountered. For some beginners among us, especially those who have not yet systematically studied the Dharma, this can be a lot to take in if you only know basic exoteric teachings. If you have never received any tantric teachings, including the bridging texts that connect the exoteric and tantric traditions, such as the teachings from the 3rd turning of the Dharma wheel, like the Mahaparinirvana Sutra. For instance, in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, the Buddha taught the final principles of permanence, bliss, self, and purity. When the Buddha first turned the Dharma wheel, he taught the 4 Dharma seals of impermanence, suffering, selflessness, and nirvana. But by the time he taught the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, as the Buddha was approaching his final nirvana, he introduced these principles of permanence, bliss, self, and purity within the exoteric tradition. In those teachings, he provided a detailed explanation of the Tathagata Garbha. These belong to the 3rd turning of the Dharma wheel. Regarding these different levels of teaching, the Buddha proclaimed the 3 turnings of the Dharma wheel to suit different types of beings. This includes the Tripitaka and the 12 divisions of the sutras, as well as the 84,000 aggregates of Dhamma. The reason for teaching in this way is that since beings have different capacities, the Dharma was taught progressively in various stages. Of course, among contemporary Buddhist practitioners, there is a group of people who have never systematically studied or practiced the Dharma. Without having a solid education in these matters, they might only have a general good feeling toward the Dharma. They have interest in faith, but they lack depth. When it comes to the actual deeper meaning of the teachings, they have not yet spent much time researching, exploring, or practicing them. Then there is another group of people, although they might have some understanding of Buddhist theory, even if they have been practitioners for a long time, they have almost never delved into the uncommon thoughts of Mahayana Buddhism. They have simply never explored these profound ideas in depth. They always remain at a very basic level, focusing only on the 4 Dharma seals or the principles of the Sravaka tradition. For these 2 types of people, what we discussed yesterday was likely quite profound. Even within the exoteric tradition, these topics are considered relatively deep. Of course, some thoughts in the Chan tradition share similar points with what we are learning here, but many have never engaged in Chan practice or koan inquiry, nor have they experienced the direct pointing out of the nature of mind in Tantra. Since they have never been exposed to such teachings, once they finally do encounter them, it can be very difficult for them to accept. They might think, I always believed the 5 heinous crimes must never be committed. So how could someone attain liberation while committing them? I took refuge in the Buddha, so I cannot associate with heterodox practitioners. Yet Vimalakirti is asking me to abandon the 3 jewels and follow those outside the faith. To me, this behavior seems extremely contradictory. They might develop all sorts of doubts, wrong views, or even give up entirely. That is a real possibility. Because of this, while I was teaching yesterday, I actually had a few reservations. My concerns came from 2 areas. First, I worried that those without a systematic background in study might find these ideas impossible to accept. My second concern was that once I spoke these words publicly, there might be certain people who already have various negative views about Mahayana Buddhism. These people might take things out of context. When they see our case studies, textual evidences, or ideas, they might find it all completely unacceptable. They might start speaking foolishly, though that is a normal phenomenon. Of course, we are not afraid of that. After careful deliberation, I decided that what needs to be taught must be taught. This is the ultimate true meaning of the Buddhist sutras. If they cannot accept this profound meaning, well, even during the time of the Buddha, there were many who could not accept his most profound teachings. Even among the teachings of the Buddhas who came before Shakyamuni, there were many who were unable to accept the Mahayana teachings. They eventually developed wrong views and even fell into hell. This kind of reaction has always been very common. But if we do not teach these things, with so many listeners joining us this time, they might never receive the ultimate meaning of Buddhism. Furthermore, many of us today do not truly understand the actual nature of the tantric teachings. In reality, people generally do not know much about it. Most are only familiar with very basic teachings for humans and celestials. They are quite comfortable with those levels, but not much else. So because of this, whether you are the listeners or I am the teacher, everyone is facing a certain challenge. But still, we should speak out the principles that need to be taught. Once they have been taught, perhaps some people may not accept them in their hearts, or they may find them unacceptable in other ways. But regardless of that, whether it is online or in person, it is quite common for people to misunderstand some of our teachings. This is a very normal phenomenon. Some people might even slander or disparage Mahayana Buddhism. When that happens, we do not need to return blow for blow or give rise to hatred. This is because many truths in this world, when faced with the debate and refutation of others, actually become clearer and clearer under such circumstances. For a person of wisdom, even if someone belittles or slanders you, the power of your wisdom and compassion will naturally manifest afterwards. On the surface, as Mifam Rinpoche teaches, some things may appear to be adverse conditions, but in reality they become favorable conditions. While other things appear to be favorable conditions, they actually turn into adverse conditions. As they say, true gold fears no fire. The truth in any era can withstand the careful scrutiny of anyone. Precisely because we have this kind of confidence, everyone should also study and reflect with great sincerity. You should wholeheartedly focus on your research, which means exploring its profound and hidden meanings. In this way, I believe that as Buddhists, we should use our most refined wisdom to seek the most precious truth. This is a very necessary thing to do. With this kind of attitude towards study and reflection, the principles we discussed yesterday were actually spoken from the perspective of the true nature. Whether it is committing the 5 heinous crimes, making offerings to the Buddhas of the 3 times, slandering the 3 jewels, or praising the 6 heterodox teachers, in our world of appearances, there are distinctions between good and bad, or what to adopt and abandon. But from the perspective of the ultimate true nature of emptiness, indeed, all of these things are completely equal. Among those here who are in the Tantric class, you have studied Mifam Rinpoche's an overview of the Guhyagarbha Tantra, the essence of clear light. In that general exposition, it cites the Lotus Sutra to speak about equanimity. Once our view has fully penetrated this point, we attain a sense of equality regarding the true nature. Empty and non-empty are equal, as are good and bad, or beautiful and ugly. For many things of this kind, what we consider to be completely contradictory in the world of appearances is actually not contradictory at all. When viewed from the perspective of the ultimate true nature, they are completely fused into one taste and one substance. These principles are very easy to understand when explained through the Vajrayana, or the ultimate thought of Mahayana Buddhism. As we study more and more, many of us will eventually have a genuine realization of our own. It is not that one cannot experience anything personally, as if we were merely using words to beautify the teaching. The more you study, the more it is like drinking water and knowing for yourself whether it is warm or cool. In the end, you can completely penetrate the profound and deep meaning within without any obstruction. At that point, no matter how many people try to sway your way of thinking, you will absolutely not be moved. You will not be changed by them. Regarding the teachings on the true nature we discussed yesterday, I hope that among our listeners, there might be some beginners, or perhaps some people who have never come into contact with such profound teachings. Because your education up to now has been relatively simple, it remains quite close to our ordinary conceptual way of thinking. For those who find something they cannot quite accept, I hope you do not rush to slander or abandon it. In those moments, please consider that the wisdom of the Buddha is inconceivable. The wisdom of the great masters and accomplished ones of the past is also beyond our limited understanding. Perhaps this will bring progress to my conceptual mind and way of thinking, so for the time being I will not abandon it. Instead, I can continue to observe and examine it. Through that process of observation, I will eventually discover its true principle. By doing this, you will come to understand the logic of emptiness and equality. Furthermore, regarding the ultimate level, which is free from all conceptual elaborations, there is no difference between good and bad or virtue and evil. At that point, you will understand the principle that the conventional level is like a dream or an illusion. For example, we saw yesterday that Subhuti became very frightened. He even left his alms bowl behind and was ready to run away. That was when Vimalakirti the layman said to him, "You do not need to be so afraid. If a transformation body of a Buddha told you these principles today, would you still be afraid?" Subhuti said that if that were the case, he would not be so afraid and everything would be fine. This is because all things are like dreams and illusions. That is truly how it is. All dharmas are like dreams and illusions. Then a teaching on this dreamlike illusion was given to him. When we study the ornament of clear realization and Mahayana Buddhism, according to Mipham Rinpoche's teachings, it is often said, including when I was teaching the verse summary of Prajnaparamita, I also mentioned this repeatedly to everyone. When I was studying the commentary on the ornament of clear realization, this principle resonated very deeply with me as well. In the ultimate, one is free from the 4 extremes and 8 elaborations, while in the conventional, all things are like dreams and illusions. This is consistent with the Prasangika Madhyamaka and many other profound teachings of our lineage. We must indeed understand this point clearly. All dharmas, from form up to omniscience, are free from the 4 extremes and 8 elaborations in the ultimate. In the conventional, they are like dreams and illusions. So in yesterday's Vimalakirti Sutra, specifically within the story of Subhuti, we can summarize the main points in this way. From the perspective of the ultimate, whether it is good or evil, everything is free from all extremes and conceptual elaborations. They are all equal and empty. We have used many different terms for this before, such as indestructible essence or the supreme ultimate truth. And on the conventional level, before our 5 or 6 sense consciousnesses, they undeniably appear just like dreams and illusions. Before one truly awakens to this truth, it is in reality always present. If you study and reflect on this principle for a long time, you will eventually come to understand it. So I am adding this supplement and reminder today. I hope that if you received a shock yesterday while we were watching the movie, you will be able to face it squarely today. Please do not let it make you feel faint. There is no need to call an ambulance and rush to the hospital because of it. Actually, this illness is not very serious at all. If a psychologist saw you, they would say you were just startled. It is fine. Just rest well for a few days. If you cannot sleep at night, that is also fine. Just make sure to eat something nourishing. It might be that your vital energy is a bit weak. You should try to regulate it a little bit. Take some Chinese herbal medicine and rest for a couple of days. Do not look at the computer or your phone. Just stay quiet for a while. And do not watch any horror films either. In a few days you will be completely fine. So there is absolutely no problem. As a newly certified counseling psychologist, this is my additional comment on what happened yesterday. Today we are going to discuss several stories. The previous ones have already been taught. We covered those foremost in wisdom and supernatural powers, Sariputra and Mahamodgalyayana. Then we had the one foremost in ascetic practice, Venerable Kashyapa, and the one foremost in understanding emptiness, Subhuti. That makes 4 people. Today we will discuss Purna. He is foremost in teaching the Dharma. He is also foremost in understanding the capacities of sentient beings. But in the presence of Vimalakirti, the layman, even his understanding of capacities was insufficient. As we often say, there are always higher mountains and greater people beyond what we see. Above Venerable Purna, there is still Vimalakirti, the layman. And above Vimalakirti, there is still our teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. Have we not already discussed this earlier? 200 gods attained purification of their Dharma eyes and 500 attained Dharma acceptance. Because these events occurred, Subhuti said at the time that he did not dare to go. Subhuti is considered a Mahayana bhikshu and a Mahayana Sravaka. There are many of his dialogues found within the Prajnaparamita Sutras. The Dharma taught to him might also be somewhat different from that of others. Arhats who have a pure Sravaka disposition have a different capacity for bearing teachings than Subhuti. Vimalakirti, the layman, is also very skillful. What he taught Subhuti was the hardest thing to accept. I have heard that many of our lay practitioners and some monastics had never heard such profound teachings before, so some could not sleep last night. This may have happened. They might be wondering how this could be. In the past, when His Holiness Jigme Phuntsok Rinpoche was teaching Rongzom Panditas entering the way of the great vehicle, a monk from my home region who had just been ordained was attending the tutorials in my class. While he was attending the tutorial, many principles from entering the way of the great vehicle were basically similar to what was taught yesterday. The most definitive and direct principles of the true nature were discussed. Among them, some points were mentioned, such as how the 3 jewels and good and evil do not exist. Later, that monk, who was Tibetan and had faith from childhood without wrong views, But because he had just taken ordination and wanted to study well and keep the precepts, was shocked that the 6 paramitas were not established. One morning he came running to me. I asked him what was wrong. He said he had been thinking about it all night and could not figure it out. We have always believed that taking ordination brings great merit. I also finally managed to take my ordination this time. But now it seems that, based on what was taught in yesterday's session, none of it exists. So I'm especially worried. And I wonder what I am supposed to be learning here. I told him that it was all fine and that he should just study slowly, step by step. This is because what we taught today is relatively profound. In reality, this is why the tantric teachings have such a progressive structure. First, one completes the preliminary practices and studies some madhyamaka. Studying madhyamaka is especially important. If you have truly understood the true nature of all phenomena through madhyamaka, and then you study dzogchen, original purity, or mahamudra, those teachings will be very easy to accept. When we tell everyone to first build a good foundation of study and reflection, some people are always very impatient. They say, I simply have no time for madhyamaka right now. Can you just write me a note so I can go straight into the tantric class? I have very great faith in the tantric teachings. I do not want to do the preliminary practices, and I do not want to study or listen. I feel that my capacity is quite excellent. I want to go straight into the tantric class. But if you go directly into the tantric class, since the layers of principles that come before it have not been systematically explained to you, it is like a first-year middle school student going straight into a senior high school class or a third-year university class. Many intermediate steps would be missing. In reality, Buddhism is a very progressive and systematic education. So I hope that those who want to study the tantric teachings in the future, which is a very good thing to do, as there is no fault in the tantric teachings, and they are not necessarily meant to be kept secret. But if your capacity has not matured progressively, it is indeed very difficult to accept its profound meanings. So today we will continue with Venerable Purna. Purna is called Maitrayani Putra. His mother's name was Maitrayani. In India, many places were originally matriarchal societies. This includes Sariputra and Katyayana. In Tibetan, we say Mokajivo, and Sariputra is called Shariwo. Wo means her son. The term Sariputra exists in Tibetan as well. Then for Katyayana, the Tibetan term is Mokajivo. Vo also means son. So they are all named after their mothers. From some of today's feminist perspectives, there might be different interpretations. Regardless, at that time, including the 6 heterodox teachers we discussed yesterday, many were named after their mothers. So Maitrayani here refers to his mother, and Purna is his own name. Purna is called Gangpo in Tibetan. Gangpo means full, or the state of being filled. In some stories, his mother had a dream while she was pregnant. His father had first prayed for a son by going to the full river and praying to the celestial deity there. After he prayed to the deity, his father had a dream upon returning home that evening. He saw a vessel made of the 7 jewels filled with treasures, and he received it. Later, an astrologer concluded that a child of very great fortune would be born into their family. When he was born, many treasures naturally appeared in his home. This was completely opposite to Subhuti. When Subhuti was born, all the treasures in the home completely disappeared. But when Venerable Purna was born, his home was filled with everything. So in some texts, he is called wish fulfillment, because the deity fulfilled the wish his father had made. This explanation also exists. Others say it means full, because the vessel was filled with rare treasures. In any case, Venerable Purna was truly outstanding. When teaching the Dharma, he understood the capacities of beings. I think I have told this story about his teaching before. Once the Buddha told him about a certain place where the beings were very difficult to tame and quite savage. Venerable Purna said he would go and teach there without any problem. The Buddha said that the place was very bad. He warned that those people were so savage that they might beat him. Purna replied that being beaten was nothing. What would they use to beat me? Perhaps stones and sticks. He said that would be fine. As they went through each scenario, the Buddha asked, what if they throw dirt and powder at you? As long as they do not throw stones, it is fine. The Buddha asked, what if they throw stones at you? As long as they do not use sticks, it is fine. What if they use sticks to beat you? That is fine. If they use sticks, as long as they do not use knives and weapons, it is fine. The Buddha said, the people in those places are very wicked. What if they attack you with weapons? That is fine. As long as I do not die, it is fine. Then the Buddha continued, "What if they kill you?" "They may indeed do that." Venerable Purna replied, "That is fine. If they kill me, I have already grown weary of this physical body myself. I think leaving this world would also be a good thing." He was quite unlike some of us. Some of us might take something originally good and imagine it to be the worst. He had many good reasons for his perspective. In the process of teaching the Dharma, on one hand, he understood the personalities and aspirations of many beings. On the other hand, he possessed great courage. We, however, might always expect the worst. If that happens, I definitely cannot go. I would not dare. What if they beat me? What if they kill me? What if I die? Many people do not dare to face such challenges. So for us practitioners, sometimes as we study the Dharma, it is very important to have some transformation within our own hearts. This is another characteristic of Venerable Purna. Additionally, in other introductions to Venerable Purna, it is mentioned that he was very well versed in medicine. He often treated the physical ailments of sentient beings. As he regularly treated their physical problems, more and more patients came to see him. After treating their physical illnesses, he would then proceed to treat their psychological illnesses. He said that being physically healthy alone is not enough. Your mind also needs to be healthy. Then he began to use skillful means to teach according to each person's needs. He would give beings especially wondrous teachings to thoroughly cure the illnesses of their hearts. Modern medicine also supports this idea. More than 200 different diseases arise from psychological issues. So we still need to care for our minds, because if your mind is not well, the body in turn becomes unwell too. For instance, if you are easily angered or often feel hatred, your liver will suffer. If you easily generate craving and greed, your lungs and other organs will not be healthy. Modern medicine and many principles taught in Buddhism are completely consistent with each other. So for our many Dharma friends who study the Dharma, if you want your body to be healthy, your state of mind must be adjusted regularly. If your mind is frequently in a state of compassion, wisdom, and the wish to benefit others, with this kind of mental state, there will not be many negative emotions. If negative emotions are absent, the body's immune system will also be strengthened. Many adverse diseases will have great difficulty entering your body. These two have a definite connection. So our Buddhist study is not entirely a religious course in reality. This is how I see it. Our Buddhist study should be a course for purifying the mind for you. We have many mental health courses now, as well as physical yoga courses, but it is regrettable that when many people truly experience psychological problems, those who can provide guidance are very few. Therefore, through Buddhism, by applying compassion and wisdom to our lives will indeed undergo a tremendous transformation. What is the reason? It is because many knots in your heart have already relaxed and come undone. Once they are undone, when you face the many problems in your actual life with a strong mind and a sincere heart, the strength with which you face them is completely different. I am not quite sure what I am talking about today. What I'm thinking is that since today's content is a bit shorter, it would be better to share some of these principles with you. But I cannot say too much, or else I have prepared 2 stories today and need to finish both. One is the story of Venerable Purna, and the other is the story of Venerable Katyayana. So this is the kind of person Venerable Purna was. At that time, Venerable Purna addressed the Buddha, "World-honored one, I dare not accept your instruction to go inquire about his illness. I do not dare to go. And what is the reason? I remember once in the past when I was beneath a tree in the forest, explaining the Dharma to novice bhiksus. In Buddhism, sitting beneath a tree is often mentioned. So our current environment here, with the planting of trees and flowers, is something I feel is done quite well in the Han region. Now we are also encouraging this in the Tibetan region, including within the monasteries and the residences of lay people. In many places, the awareness in this area still needs to be raised. This is because environmental protection brings many benefits to our own human health. In Buddhism, we often see that even the Buddha was born beneath a tree. When the Buddha was practicing austerities, he did so beneath a tree by the Nairanjana river. When the Buddha attained enlightenment at the Vajrasana in India, it was also beneath the Bodhi tree. Then, when the wheel of Dharma was turned, it took place in the forest of the Deer Park. That was where the first turning occurred. Of course, regarding the turning of the Dharma wheel, other places, including Vulture Peak, also have many trees, and there is also the city of Vaishali. Wherever the Buddha turned the wheel of Dharma, there were beautiful trees. This remains true even now. Finally, when the Buddha manifested nirvana, it was also beneath the great sala trees. So whenever we see trees, we still feel a deep sense of connection. Upon seeing a tree, we think, wow, this tree is something wonderful. I've always felt this way. At that time, Venerable Purna was teaching the Dharma to these new bhiksus. While he was teaching, the layman Vimalakirti appeared again. He often shows up suddenly like that. He is like some of our managers and Dharma masters. Sometimes when we hold oral examinations, someone will quietly come over to see how things are going. They want to listen carefully. They want to see how the students are studying. I hope many of our Dharma friends will pay more attention to this. Some Dharma masters never observe what their students are doing. They do not seem to care about the well-being of those they lead. As long as they finish their own class, nothing else matters to them. That is not a very good way to be a Dharma master. As a Dharma master, within your own class and area of responsibility, you should know the level of each person's wisdom. You should know their compassion, their character, and their discipline in all aspects. Sometimes we are not like the layman Vimalakirti, who can fully perceive everyone's capacity and nature, but if we do pay attention, we will certainly come to understand certain things. So in general, this is still very necessary. I often think about our oral examinations. Some people perform truly well. They are excellent. As I observe them, I see this here and certainly elsewhere as well. I hear that many people attending the classes have gathered commentaries by Master Sengzhao, Kuiji, and Hui Yuan. They bring these materials to cross-reference and compare everything. They are always studying very earnestly. If we study like this, I believe our Buddhist community will be of very high quality and cultural standing. Many people within it are reaching a very advanced level. This is something everyone should notice. During each oral examination, I look at everyone's resumes and how long they have studied the Dharma. Of course, it is difficult for me alone to know everyone's capacity. It presents a certain challenge. Therefore, I hope the Dharma masters and assistants in all locations will make the cultivation of talent their highest priority. If we value this highly, it will gradually bring great benefit to the propagation and flourishing of the Dharma. I am not sure if you remember, but when I taught the Sword of Wisdom for thoroughly ascertaining reality before, there was a specific session on training lay Dharma masters. When I brought up the idea of lay Dharma masters, many Buddhists were completely stunned. They asked if such a thing as a lay teacher even exists. In reality, the layman Vimalakirti is a classic example of it. As you can see, even many monastics cannot compare to him. So we also want to train a group of lay Dharma masters who are just like him. This is truly very necessary. In many Western countries, those who propagate the Dharma include monastics who appear in lay form. People here often ask if they can manifest in that way now. In the West, many teachers were monastics originally, but later chose to manifest in lay form like Vimalakirti. This kind of manifestation exists there too. Here we will likely discuss the principles of teaching appropriately. While Purna was teaching the new bhiksus, Vimalakirti arrived. He called out, "O Purna!" The layman Vimalakirti likely addressed him with great respect. "Venerable Purna, you should only explain the Dharma after first entering into concentration and contemplating the minds of these people. Do not put defiled food in a jeweled vessel." This was the general advice he gave him. Originally, Venerable Purna was very skilled at teaching according to the situation. But as I just mentioned, compared to the layman Vimalakirti, he had not used the wisdom of Samadhi to make his discernments. Furthermore, he did not fully know the capacity of each being. So Vimalakirti told him here, first, you should observe their aspirations and character. Once you have understood their nature, you should teach the Mahayana or Hinayana Dharma accordingly. Otherwise, you risk putting food tainted with self-interest, like defiled food into a jeweled vessel. The Dharma of the Sravaka tradition is focused on self-interest. If you give these to those who are great Dharma vessels of Mahayana capacity, then you have already ruined the opportunity as it is inappropriate. So what is being discussed here is the necessity of observing their capacity. He said you should understand what these bhiksus are thinking. Do not put lapis lazuli together with crystal. What you need to understand is the aspiration of these bhiksus and what their minds are focused on. Do they love the Mahayana Dharma or the Hinayana Dharma? By all means, you must not make this mistake. In ancient times, lapis lazuli was one of the 7 jewels and was extremely precious. Lapis lazuli is such a fine treasure, so you must not mistake it for common rock crystal. Actually, crystal can also be quite valuable today. But in this context, compared with lapis lazuli, it is not nearly as precious. Do not treat it as mere crystal. The main point being made here, as the Tibetan version states, is that you should not mistake lapis lazuli for a counterfeit gem. This also refers to our own aspirations. Regarding these aspirations, some love the Mahayana and others love the Hinayana. Some love the vehicle of humans and celestials. Some might not even be able to accept that much. So there are different levels, just like the metaphors for these gems. The Mahayana is extremely precious, like lapis lazuli. If you view it as ordinary crystal and conflate it with the self-interested Shravaka or human celestial vehicles, that would be inappropriate. He said that if you do not know the roots of these beings, you should not lead them toward the Hinayana path. Because you do not know their capacity, you should not make them generate a Hinayana mind. This means you really need to understand their capacity. We spoke of aspiration earlier, and now we are discussing capacity. As for their spiritual capacity, some are sharp and others are dull. Some have a Hinayana capacity, while others have a Mahayana capacity. There are all these different capacities. However, if you do not know a person's true capacity, if you are unaware of it, and you simply tell them to practice the Shravaka path of the Hinayana, that is inappropriate. Looking at the literal meaning here, the new bhiksus whom Venerable Purna was guiding seemed on the surface to be newly ordained. They appeared to be beginning students. In reality, however, these bhiksus were truly remarkable. This will be mentioned later as well. They had planted seeds of virtue before 500 Buddhas. They had simply forgotten this in their current life. They actually possess a great deal of merit. At that time, Venerable Purna was not aware of this. But the layman Vimalakirti knew it completely. Some of our Dharma masters might do the same thing when they teach. Whether it is a Dharma master or a teaching assistant, what they say often reflects their own personal aspirations. For example, if they personally love to cultivate bodhicitta, they will talk about bodhicitta every single day. If they prefer teaching about renunciation and Hinayana liberation, especially if they are not in a great mood, or if they have grown weary of this world, they will speak of nothing but renunciation all the time. They do this because they personally feel repelled by the world. So when they teach, they focus solely on that topic. Other Dharma masters in their own practice might find the tantric view of the equality of pure and impure to be especially beneficial for themselves. A person like that will constantly talk about the pure mind. The teachings of the three vehicles, such as renunciation, bodhicitta, and the pure view, all have their differences. The capacities of Dharma masters vary as well. Sometimes when I observe the small group tutorials here, I see that some teach very well, with a very deep and profound meaning. Others, however, just ramble on. The worst part is that they do not even realize they are rambling. They speak with great confidence and a loud voice, even though almost everything they say is incorrect. This is actually a very serious issue. You must be careful about this and not be too bold. As much as you can, follow the lineage teachings and keep examining the sutra's meaning. In that case, if you happen to get something slightly wrong, it is at least understandable. But it is another thing when what you say is completely wrong, yet you present it with absolute certainty. Sometimes the people listening are laughing, while others wonder where you even learned such things. They wonder what on earth you are talking about. Your words have nothing to do with the sutra, like telling random stories. Of course, for some of us, opportunities to teach the Dharma are quite rare. In those moments, certain things we personally prefer might come out. These are the principles being discussed here. Next, the text explains why the Sravaka tradition and the Mahayana are somewhat different. The most crucial point regarding this difference is that if you do not know the spiritual capacity of beings, you should not make them generate a Hinayana mind. Otherwise, you might ruin their mind stream. The Mahadipadarani Sutra also states, if one recklessly teaches the Dharma without knowing the capacity of beings, one causes others to lose benefit and increases their inverted thoughts. If we do not understand the capacity of beings, yet think we are very capable and recklessly expound the Dharma to them, the true benefit will actually be lost. We might even cause them to increase their inverted conceptual thoughts. Therefore, all of us, whether we are providing tutorials or explaining the sutras and teaching others, must be very earnest. If you make an unintentional verbal mistake or unintentionally teach something incorrectly, the fault may not be very great, but do not deliberately go against the true principles taught by the Buddha. Since we do not possess clairvoyance now, it is very difficult to fully know the capacity of beings. Still, I will try to teach based on what is generally liked and what everyone can commonly agree upon. I will focus on these principles during my teaching. And when we teach, we can use various ways to explain the Dharma. The Manjusri Pratibhana Sutra says, the original conduct of people varies greatly. For their sake, different kinds of Dharma are taught so they can enter the path. So various types of Dharma are taught to suit them. Sometimes it is about what they care about. I am fairly familiar with the personalities of many of the Dharma friends here. Sometimes, if I deliberately want to make people laugh, it works for a certain portion of the audience. Of course, everyone's sense of humor is different. For instance, in a film, the sense of humor of people from the South and the North is completely different. Eastern and Western people are even more distinct. When Westerners burst out laughing, many Easterners do not laugh at all. And when many Easterners are laughing, Westerners might wonder why they are reacting that way. They might even seem dissatisfied with the behavior. So our capacities, including those of Easterners and Westerners, are different. The capacities of those from the South and the North also differ. Therefore, please do not bring these pets into the classroom in the future. Otherwise, they often seem to cause fright. Causing monastics to experience this is not good for the animals themselves either. In this way, it is very necessary to know the capacity of beings. Next, the text says that other and self are without flaw, so do not harm them. Because their mind is healthy, you should not teach them a dharma they cannot accept. That would only cause them fear and sadness. For those who have no faith in the tantric teachings, teaching them those views would be a great shock. I was worried that when I taught the story of Subhuti yesterday, it might have caused a severe wound for many people. This is because they cannot accept such ideas yet. My original faith was in the teacher and the triple gem. How could Vimalakirti say to slander the Buddha and the Dharma? Follow these 6 heterodox teachers and even take ordination with them. I would never do that. I'm not going to study this anymore. In the Lotus Sutra, 5,000 people also left the assembly. It does not take a very large reason to happen. So the psychological endurance of different people varies. On the surface, everyone seems the same. They appear to be basically the same, but in reality, our inner hearts are completely different. Some are extremely strong. Others are especially fragile, even slightly. What is wrong? Huh? Come, have some water. Good, let us continue with the next part. You see, some people were frightened by the dog, while others started laughing. This is exactly how different capacities work. As we just discussed, some people hear a dog barking and experience a severe shock. Others hear about Mahayana emptiness and are too frightened to accept it. Regarding this, a metaphor is given here. If someone wishes to travel the great highway because they themselves aspire to the great Mahayana path, if you teach them the Hinayana principle of individual selflessness, they will also be unable to accept it. Do not try to put the water of the great ocean into a cow's hoof print. That is something very small and tiny. The imprint left by a cow's hoof is very tiny. The Maharatnakuta Sutra says, the Sravaka path is narrow and inferior like a cow's hoof print. It seems we have used this scriptural evidence before. It cannot extinguish the afflictions of all beings. This is because the Sravaka path is very narrow. What they realize in that state is like the small amount of water held in a cow's hoof print. The various and different afflictions of beings cannot be completely extinguished. This is the meaning. Furthermore, Mount Sumeru cannot be placed inside a mustard seed. This comparison is present in the Tibetan and some other versions of the sutra. However, this Chinese version does not include it. The meaning is that the king of mountains is immensely vast. Placing this vast king of mountains inside a tiny mustard seed would be very hard to accept and impossible to contain. Then consider sunlight. Do not equate the brilliant light of the sun with the dim light of a firefly. To treat them as equal is simply impossible. Of course, some of these comparisons are made in terms of profundity, some in terms of vastness, and some in terms of the difficulty of penetration. Regarding these metaphors, in the explanations provided by other great masters, there are certain differences. Vimalakirti, the layman, continued to speak to Venerable Purna. In other translations of this text, it says the roar of a lion should not be equated with the bark of a fox. This sentence is included in the Tibetan and some other translations. The meaning is that the lion's roar of Mahayana emptiness should not be compared to the mere bark of a fox. Do not regard them as being equal. This part is placed in the middle of the passage. There is this sentence before the mention of Purna. As for these bhiksus, it is simply that you, Purna, do not know their history. In reality, these bhiksus had already generated Mahayana Bodhicitta a very long time ago. They had simply forgotten it during the interim. This is because many lifetimes have passed in between. Perhaps many of us here have also already generated Mahayana Bodhicitta. It is just that during the process of rebirth we experienced womb obscurations, or, while being reborn as other beings for various reasons at that time. Wait, have another sip of water. The commitment was simply forgotten during the interval. So why are you guiding them with Hinayana Dharma? Venerable Purna simply did not know this, so it is not his fault. But Vimalakirti possesses the wisdom to know that all of them had previously generated that aspiration. Indeed, it is very troublesome when we do not know someone's spiritual capacity. But after being in contact with someone for a period of time, you can basically tell whether they have faith in the Mahayana or not. You gradually learn whether they have faith in the Hinayana as well. The capacity and aspiration of every being still differ greatly. Vimalakirti, the layman, says, I observe with my wisdom. He notes that the wisdom of the Hinayana is shallow. It is like that of a blind person. They cannot fully distinguish certain things. Specifically, they cannot distinguish whether the capacities of beings are sharp or dull. Regarding the sharpness and dullness of spiritual capacities, those in the Hinayana truly find it difficult to discern. Only Mahayana wisdom can accomplish this. This point is likely from the Mahaparinirvana Sutra. In the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, there is a story told. I'm not sure if I have taught this before. Sariputra was guiding two disciples. He had one practice the meditation on impurity, and he had the other practice the meditation on breathing. They had been studying for many years, but they did not show a single sign of accomplishment. Later, both of them began to give rise to wrong views. They thought that this Buddhist path had no meaning at all. They felt they had not made any progress. Then the Buddha observed the situation. He saw that Sariputra had taught the wrong practices to these two disciples. Their practices needed to be switched. The one practicing the meditation on white bones actually had a capacity for breathing meditation, while the one practicing breathing meditation had a capacity for white bones meditation. What was the reason for this? The person practicing white bones meditation used to be a laundry worker. He regularly washed clothes. To him, the concepts of clean and unclean were very significant. So if he practiced the meditation on impurity, he would attain accomplishment easily. As for the other disciple, he should have been practicing breathing meditation. He was a goldsmith. A goldsmith makes things like gold necklaces. His breathing was naturally very slow. He worked very carefully and meticulously, step by step. Because of this, he had the right capacity for that practice. Afterward, the Buddha criticized Sariputra. You should have observed their capacities, as the Dharma you gave them was incorrect. He told him to switch their practices and let them try again. In the end, after they practiced this way, they attained arhatship in a very short time. So sometimes, whether we are accepting or guiding disciples, it is understandable if there is some initial mismatch. Some Dharma friends often say, I am not aligned with this Dharma or that one either. It is very necessary to find a Dharma that is well aligned with oneself. We need to know that in the Sravaka tradition, the methods of taming are somewhat different from the Mahayana. The reason is that, on one hand, the wisdom of the Sravaka tradition is limited. On the other hand, its skillful means are also limited. There is also a case mentioned in the Mahaprajna Paramita Sastra. I'm not sure if I've mentioned this before. At that time, a pigeon was being chased by a hawk. It was extremely frightened and tried to hide everywhere. Both Sariputra and the Buddha were present at the time. The pigeon hid in Sariputra's shadow, but it was still trembling with fear. This was because the hawk had been chasing it just a moment ago. The pigeon was still terrified and trembling. Then it moved to hide in the shadow of the Buddha. At that point, it became very calm. It no longer felt any fear. What was the reason for this difference? It is because the Buddha had already completely eliminated all obstacles and habitual tendencies. Furthermore, when the Buddha examined the situation with his wisdom, Sariputra only knew how many years it had been a pigeon in the past and how many it would be in the future. He could see how many more years it would remain a pigeon. But beyond that specific time frame, he did not know anything else. However, when the Buddha examined the pigeon, he knew exactly what its previous lives were like. He saw that it would remain a pigeon for countless kalpas, as numerous as the grains of sand in the Ganges. Then it would eventually be reborn as a human. After attaining a human body, it would finally attain liberation. The Buddha could see the entire process clearly. Therefore, based on the teachings of the great treatise on the perfection of wisdom, we can understand two things. First, the wisdom and ability of the Sravaka tradition are limited. Second, the wisdom and ability of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are truly inconceivable. Personally, I feel that aside from your specific root masters, to whom you feel genuine gratitude for the Dharma, it is generally best to carry a Buddha image on your person. A Buddha image represents the complete elimination of all obstacles and the realization of all wisdom through an inconceivable power. This power works naturally and spontaneously. Technically, the shadow of the Buddha and the shadow of Sariputra should look the same. Both are just shadows. So why could one save the pigeon while the other could not? In reality, there are many beings that Bodhisattvas and Sravakas simply cannot save. This includes the so-called spiritual teachers among us humans. In theory, we speak of viewing the master as the Buddha. We regard anyone who has shared the Dharma with us as being like the Buddha, but this is spoken from the perspective of pure perception. In reality, are all people who transmit the Dharma truly Buddhas? Not necessarily. Some might not even have the qualifications of a Bodhisattva. Some might not even have the qualifications of an Arhat. Some might not even have the qualifications of a decent human being. If we consider a truly good teacher in our world, such as a dedicated professor in a school who is wholeheartedly devoted to their students, do such so-called Mahayana masters really exist everywhere? You can see the reality for yourselves. If someone lacks even the compassion of a worldly associate professor, yet you insist on viewing them as identical to the Buddha, that would be a complete over-mystification of Buddhism. It is an excessive kind of mystification. Therefore, I feel that when we evaluate any other person, especially when truth is our primary concern, we should not completely mystify them, nor should we completely demonize them. We should take objective principles as our subject for research. I originally planned to discuss 2 stories today, but I cannot finish. I have only taught 1 story so far. At this point, Vimalakirti the layman entered a Samadhi. Through his Samadhi, which allows one to know former lives, he helped these newly ordained bhiksus recognize their past lives. The visions began to manifest. All right. Okay, let's continue. I also feel a bit embarrassed. It is fine. These things happen when one is ill. They attain the knowledge of their former lives. They had previously planted seeds of virtue before 500 Buddhas. Just now, these bhiksus came to know their previous lives. They also realized they had dedicated merit toward Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. At that moment, they had a sudden awakening. The entire experience of having previously generated bodhicitta was suddenly present. They returned to their original heart. The circumstances of how they had previously generated that aspiration played out like a film. They saw how they had made vows before those Buddhas, generated bodhicitta, and dedicated their merit. Like waking from a dream, everything suddenly became clear. At this time, those bhiksus, including Venerable Purna, felt especially grateful toward Vimalakirti the layman. Although he has the status of a layman, these bhiksus began to prostrate at his feet. If someone is an accomplished master, even though according to the common vehicle, monastics usually do not prostrate to lay people. Among monastics, a novice can prostrate to a bhiksu, but a bhiksu cannot prostrate to a novice. A bhikshuni also cannot prostrate to a sramanerika. Monastics generally cannot prostrate to lay people. Of course, for those with high realization, although Vimalakirti is of lay status, it is possible to prostrate to him under special circumstances. So in the current reality of certain Buddhist circles, some lay people frequently refer to themselves as acharyas. A true acharya can indeed be spoken of in this way. But if they do not have any actual realization themselves, and they only appear before their disciples claiming to be an acharya, while the disciples simply follow them blindly, with large groups of people surrounding them everywhere they go, then the situation becomes very difficult to justify. Such situations can and do happen. Furthermore, the general manner and presentation of some people can be very arrogant. I have personally encountered some lay acharyas who were like this. In the past, however, some lay acharyas and treasure discoverers were very humble. They would honestly think that they had no particular merit. They would say they were only the incarnation of a certain master. They were always very respectful toward monastics. In fact, they were even afraid of monastics prostrating to them. But for someone truly like Vimalakirti the layman, it is perfectly fine for any monastic to prostrate to them. There should be no problem with that at all. But if someone is not at that kind of enlightenment, yet pretends to be like Vimalakirti while acting superior to monastics, that is actually quite alarming. Of course, only the individuals themselves truly know the truth. Those masters and reincarnate lamas should know their own level of realization. Generally speaking, if we follow a more stringent standard, lay people should maintain the humble way of a lay person. Some lay people have great accomplishment and merit, yet remain very humble. Actually, remaining humble in this way is probably a better approach. From the perspective of overall tradition and decorum, even if you are a truly outstanding great master, if you are in lay status, you should still respect monastics. This is because wearing the Buddha's Dharma robe, the kasaya, is a truly significant and noble thing. From this angle, it is good to show respect toward monastics. So in our daily life today, if an outstanding layperson receives prostrations from monastics, that is also permissible and fine. As the story goes, the bhiksus all prostrated to him. Then Vimalakirti explained the Dharma for them, and they never again retrogressed from their progress to Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. He gave them the Mahayana teachings so that they would not retreat from their aspiration for perfect awakening. At that time, Venerable Purna shared his realization. He said, "World-honored one, this is what I think." This part connects to what was mentioned previously. World-honored one, I thought, Shravakas do not consider the faculties of people and therefore should not explain the Dharma. Those Shravakas who have not carefully observed the spiritual capacity of others should probably avoid teaching the Dharma. What is the reason for this? This explanation also exists in the Tibetan version. Other versions provide two specific reasons. One reason is that they cannot discern between superior and non-superior capacities. That is the first reason. The second reason is that they do not remain in Samadhi for extended periods as the Buddha does. So at that time he suggested that Shravakas should not teach the Dharma before accurately observing a person's capacity. The reason is that they are different from Mahayana Bodhisattvas and Buddhas. First, they do not truly know the underlying capacity of others. Their wisdom is inherently limited. Second, they are often not in a state of Samadhi. When one is not in Samadhi, they will often say things incorrectly if they choose to speak. These are the reasons given. This was the interaction between Vimalakirti the layman and Venerable Purna. Therefore, I cannot accept your instruction to go inquire about his illness, because he can see through one's spiritual capacity. I do not dare to face him directly. Therefore, I cannot accept your instruction to go inquire about his illness. So this time I simply cannot go. The Buddha was not just sending ordinary people to inquire about Vimalakirti. The disciples chosen here are very representative. Those foremost in supernatural powers, wisdom, ascetic practice, and the understanding of emptiness. Those foremost in knowing capacities and teaching the Dharma. Even toward these outstanding great masters, Vimalakirti challenged each one in turn. So what we see here is sometimes a comparison between the common vehicle and the uncommon vehicle. This should inspire deep reflection in everyone. As I mentioned before, I hope that for any parts you find difficult to accept, you simply generate a good aspiration. Think about the Buddha's profound and inconceivable wisdom, and tell yourself that one day you will surely penetrate his true intention. Hope that you will understand the Buddha's intent as soon as possible. think about the deep intention of these great masters and revered teachers. Do not just repeat what others say. If others say something is unreasonable, do not just agree blindly. If you try to argue against it without understanding, both you and others will fall into the lower realms, which is truly terrible. So I am very happy this time that everyone has the opportunity to hear such profound teachings. I also feel that our human life is very difficult to obtain while we have this precious human body. Studying these profound dharmas is a great blessing. Many people are truly capable of understanding them and should have the capacity to receive them. In this way, while we are still in this life, we can form a very positive connection with the profound Mahayana Dharma and plant truly excellent seeds for the future. By doing so, we bring meaning to both ourselves and others. Personally speaking, receiving the Dharma is what I am most interested in. I believe that for everyone attending this class, your time is incredibly precious and rare. Everyone is so busy these days. I know that each of you is occupied with endless tasks. But in the midst of such a busy schedule, taking the time to study is a truly wonderful and virtuous condition. We have translation of 4 languages available here, including Tibetan, Chinese, Japanese, and English. To the Dharma friends who provide all kinds of convenience in this regard, I offer my sincere thanks. I also want to thank those who support these Dharma teachings in other ways, acting as the essential small screws in this great machine. I am especially grateful to you. Without everyone's joint effort, it would be inconceivable for so many people to gather like this. Whether it is 10 people or 100 people, gathering together to attend a single class is a condition that requires a massive collective effort. Without such dedication, it would not be nearly as simple as one might imagine. Therefore, everyone should truly cherish this opportunity. We will meet again next month. I hope that when we resume teaching in early August, everyone who is present today, including all of our listeners online, can participate without a single person missing. I'm not sure if these flowers will still be here at that time. In any case, yesterday some people asked me not to pick the flowers, but I did not pick them myself. They were picked by others. I had no part in it. I hope everyone understands this. We are very grateful to all of you. You are all most welcome to continue studying with us. I look forward to seeing everyone next month. Let us continue our happy study together.
Bandangara Badna Sadarda Bandangara Badna Sada Bandangara Badna Sadarda